Cryptography for Christmas. So Christmas is the time of the big secrets. So here we have three friends, Charlie, Alice, and Bianca, and they all want to give a present to their dear friend Chris. But Alice is concerned. Let's check that we don't give the same present to Chris. Charlie says, but I want my present to be a surprise for you also. Bianca is a cryptographer, and she has an idea. She says, let's use secure multi-party computation. So what is this? So each person has a secret input of what Chris might need. Let me not read it out, it's very secret. So this is what Alice thinks. This is what Charlie thinks Chris needs. And here's Bianca's idea, an extension of Pandemic, board game. Okay, so now with secure multi-party computation, they can perform a computation such that they learn it looks like we all have different presents. Now, what is secure multi-party computation? It allows us to securely evaluate a function on secret inputs x1, x2, and x3. And then we get the output y, which is the output of this beautiful function. It returns yes if two things are equal and else no. Okay, cryptography for Christmas. But there are even bigger secrets in Christmas. Let's look at this conversation between Alice and Bianca. Alice says, Chris says he can be Santa Claus this year. And Bianca says, oh, that's great. Afterwards, Chris can just arrive late to the party, and no one will suspect anything. It will just look like always. So now, this kind of conversation is very, very sensitive, because we might have an eavesdropper nearby who's very interested in the contents of this conversation, but we don't want to reveal them. So now, let me take a step back from this Christmas tale. So in cryptography, we call this eavesdropper an adversary who is listening to the communication. And we try to communicate securely in the presence of an adversary, so that the adversary has no idea what we are talking about. And also, we don't reveal the answers to any questions that we want to keep hidden. Just for the atmosphere, here's a picture of Santa Claus. That's the real one, of course. Okay, so we want to communicate in the presence of an adversary. So we want to design protocols and argue about their security. But we don't know the adversary's strategy. How can we design a protocol if we don't know the adversary's strategy? So let's say here we have Alice and Bianca, and they communicate via these little notes that they leave on the kitchen table. And now our adversary is already a little bit older and can already write. So let's say the adversary replaces Alice's notes with their own note. So Alice and Bianca have to come up with a protocol that protects against this kind of attack. So now they agree on the following strategy. And they say, well, let's check the signature. Check that Alice's signature looks plausible. And if you look a little bit closely, you see that the signature actually does not look the same. So attack detected, great protocol. So all good. But no. Maybe the adversary chooses a different strategy. So how about the following? Instead of replacing the node, the adversary tears the paper into two and writes a note on the lower half of the paper. So now our fantastic protocol that says check the signature, it fails to detect the attack because the signature looks good. So what do we do as cryptographers if we don't know the adversary strategy, and we still want to design protocols and argue about security. So our approach is the following. We design a model. We think about what are all the things that the adversary can do. So the adversary controls the network where our messages flow back and forth. The adversary can reorder, modify, drop messages. And then in the scenario, we come up with the following kind of proof. We prove that if there is an attack in this model, then we can solve a hard problem. I'll say in a second what these hard problems is, but let's think a little bit about what does this mean. It means that if this problem is actually hard, then there is no attack in this model. Because if there was an attack, then we could solve a hard problem. So without knowing what the adversary strategy is, by proving this kind of transformation or reduction, as it's called, we can show that no matter what the strategy is, there is no attack in this model as long as this problem is actually hard. So the kind of hard problems that we like are, for example, in the factoring of two large numbers. Each of us knows how to multiply two large numbers, but given the result of the multiplication, finding the two numbers, if the numbers are prime, this is very hard. So this is a very established problem and believed to be difficult for classical computers. Now, if there should be large enough, stable enough quantum computers, then we know how to factor numbers. So we're using different hard problems. For example, solving systems of noisy linear equations. These are just examples. There are other hard problems that we could use. For example, we could try to build cryptography from the hardness of solving a Sudoku. But let me now maybe stay with things that we actually use and maybe talk a little bit about my own research. So when we buy a train ticket online, we go to the website of VR, and we will see this little lock here, and S, which stands for secure. And that means that in the background, there is a cryptographic protocol running, the transport layer security protocol, which encrypts our communication and protects us against modifications. So now my goal is to show that if there is an attack in the model on this protocol, then we can solve some hard problem. And for this protocol, this is very hard because it's a protocol whose description is over 100 pages. And so my specialty is to look at large, complicated things, such as TLS, and to decompose them and study whether the pieces fit together. And in this case of TLS, we show that they fit together quite well, actually. So now this is a protocol between two parties, and it's already complicated. But now, what about a group chat in a messaging application? So this is even more complicated. So now, all our messaging applications support group chats. So here we have a group of Alice, Bianca, and Charlie. And so they need to agree on a joint key that they can use to encrypt their messages. Now, as time goes on, Dana might join the group. So now what would we like? We would like that Alice, Bianca, Charlie, and Dana, they all agree on the same cryptographic secret, which they can use to protect their messages. And importantly, Dana should not be able to read the messages that were sent in the group before. And so now, as time further goes on, maybe Alice leaves the group. So now the group again should agree on a cryptographic key that is not shared with Alice, so that Alice cannot read the messages that are sent later. So this is a complicated group communication setting. It's a little bit more complicated. Again, the protocol description is over 100 pages. And we studied this protocol and were early enough to improve some modifications to improve the standard a little bit. Okay, so I'm very conservative when it comes to cryptographic assumptions, when it comes to hard problems. I only want to use hard problems that I'm really convinced of are difficult, that have been really well studied. So sometimes it's just very difficult to design a protocol based on this well-established assumption. And I ask myself, is this possible? Can I do this? And well, sometimes it turns out that it's impossible. And I like to prove that it's impossible. So how do we prove that something like this is impossible? We want to show that such a proof cannot exist. How do we show that there is no proof? So one strategy that we have is we show that if there was such a proof, then the problem cannot be hard. So if the problem is hard, there is no proof. And in any case, there is no point in coming up with such a proof if this is true. So, well, we can think about it over a glass of champagne later, but let me come back to the Christmas tale. So I got the extension of Pandemic, the board game, and of course, in the interest of scientific integrity and honesty, I should not say wrong things in my installation talk, so just want to clarify that this person next to the tree is myself. And I would like you to take with you that indeed cryptography protects our communication, but also that you might be able to use cryptography to coordinate your presence in the end of this year. Thank you.